What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hooksets are free. My name is Tyler, and it is almost 9:30 here on Saturday night, January 8th. So, if you're watching this on the replay, what's up? I'm gonna give people a minute to hop in here live, and we're just gonna hang out for a little bit tonight and talk about fishing. One of our favorite things to do here in my house and on this channel. So hope you guys are having a good one whenever it is that you're watching this video. I just got done watching Debo's live stream as well as the two Saturday football games, final week of the NFL season. So my Denver Broncos got beat late in the game today against the Kansas City Chiefs. And what can you do? I guess technically it's good for our draft position for next year, but super embarrassing that we went 5-12 this year in a 17-game season. So, yeah, a little bit embarrassing. Daniel T in the house. How you doing tonight, man? I am doing pretty well. Thank you for asking. All is well on my end. So just thought I would hop in here, as is pretty typical for me on a Saturday or sometimes a Friday night, and just chat fishing. It is that time of year where it is about time to clean up the mess that is this basement. I know the wall behind me always looks uh, pretty organized, and you guys know that I like to be organized and keep things um, where they go, but you would not believe just how much of a mess it is in this room. I've got a table over here to my right that is totally covered. I've got boxes all over the floor. The table that I'm sitting in front of is covered in lures, and I need to I need to clean it up, put things in their homes, reorganize boxes, and move things around because, as is the case, um, as was the case last year, I have acquired more and more tackle over the course of the year. And so not everything fits in one or even sometimes two boxes dedicated to a certain technique. And I consider that a good problem to have, but it requires a lot of thought and organizing. So I am at that point right now where I really need to figure out how many different tackle boxes I need to get and for what, and get a little bit better organized so that come March or April, I am ready to rock and just can go to my dedicated boxes as opposed to digging around and going back to the baits that I have always thrown. And yeah, that's the whole point is in getting new tackle, you want to be able to utilize it and kind of figure out what is worth adding to the arsenal um, that wasn't already a staple. So that is kind of where I'm at. Hope everybody's doing well. I only see a couple of people in here, and Daniel's the only one that's dropped a comment so far. We can talk about reorganizing if you guys want, but I would appreciate it if you guys might drop a comment. Let me know if there's anything in particular that you guys want to talk about tonight. I was over watching Debo's live stream with Mr. Bass and Steve Chapman from Get Your Fish On. And they were just on for like 2.5 hours and had some really interesting conversation, but it was all over the place and was led by the chat. So if you guys have any particular questions, whether it is kind of like a format that Debo just did in this or that, awesome. Or if you guys just have individual questions that are totally random, that's great as well. So I know that Ron Holly, who will probably be in here shortly, does love to ask the question. Um, Shoot, what does he call it? It's not trash or pass, it's must or bust. So you guys could ask things like that, or you could ask if I have particular opinions or preferences when it comes to one thing over the other. And theoretically, it could be outside of fishing. So it doesn't really matter to me. But losing big fish, what's up, man? How you doing tonight? And Solo X Fury back in the house tonight. Appreciate you being in here. Hope you guys are doing well. Solo X Fury says, what do you think about the Tokyo rig? I wanted to start using it in the saltwater where I fish. I like it a lot. So I've got a dedicated box, one of these small little, I don't even know what size this is that that Flambeau makes, but I always carry around a handful of Tokyo rigs wherever I am, just because I think it's a very effective way to fish. Some of these are Jica rigs, some of these are Tokyo rigs, and I will show you guys real quick a couple of the ways that I fish them. And this might not even be my main box of Tokyo rigs. I just like to carry some of them around with me at all times. And so originally, the Tokyo rig released by VMC came like so. It is a swivel attached to a split ring, but this split ring is actually welded. So it's not a traditional split ring. And then it's got a wire dropper to it that is attached via swivel. So this will swivel. And then a hook that is attached to that welded split ring. Now, originally, they only made it in this EWG version. And then they came out with two other versions. One was like a worm hook style. Ouch. Worm hook. This is not the Tokyo rig. This is a homemade Jica rig. This is about as cheap as you can make them. So this is a traditional stainless steel split ring and a stainless steel swivel attached to like a cheap drop shot weight. Okay. Really easy to make these, cheap to make these. Jica rig differs from the Tokyo rig in that it is a short leader. Technically, the Tokyo rig is as well, but this is a wire leader that has a dropper that is, 2.5 inches long. And so they're both kind of variations of the drop shot, kind of a hybrid between, say, the drop shot and the Texas rig. So here is the most common way that I tend to fish the Tokyo rig, because it is also known as the punch shot rig. And so I will throw opposing tungsten weights on here so that it is facing downward and will enter vegetation really well, but then also come out really well. If you were to just throw it like you would a Texas rig, right, it's going to go through cover well, but then because your line is tied to this swivel here, the weight's not going to come back up out of cover. So it is going to drag the weight and the bait up like this, and you're going to get some vegetation caught up in here a little bit more. So if you are punching, if you're going in and out of vegetation, this opposing weight strategy is the way to go, in my opinion. Theoretically, you could peg these weights down, and that might help a little bit, but I kind of like the sound that it makes when these weights are actually clacking together. So I will throw one single weight pointed down if I'm fishing around sparse cover. If I'm just flipping around, say like a Texas rig, and I just find that it has a slightly better hookup ratio because of that separation, and little bit more freedom of movement. So especially if you're throwing a buoyant bait, um, I like the Tokyo rig over a Texas rig a lot of the time for something that is weighted. Okay. I do throw a weightless Texas rig a lot, but for punching, I would throw, say, the flippin' hook version of the Tokyo rig. And then for a traditional, if I'm just flipping, um, pitching to isolated cover, that's where I will go to more of an EWG. And then sometimes if I'm throwing a worm, I might use the round bend style worm hook. But um, there are very subtle differences um, in, say, where I would use the EWG versus the worm hook. And I do usually opt for an EWG over a worm hook. That's just me personally. But I think that the Jica Rig is an awesome alternative that you can make on your own and for very cheap. Now, Owner does make their own Jica Rig that they call the Jig Rig, but this guy here I can make cheaper, and it's all super high quality components. So on this guy, I've got an Owner Hyperwire split ring. I've got a Spro swivel on there. I've got a Gamakatsu 1/0 EWG on here. Actually, that's an Owner. And then I've got a tungsten drop shot weight. And this is the same style weight that you would use for the free rig that does have an open eye. Obviously, in order for it to fit on this split ring, it has to be an open eye. So I do like to throw this where I would throw a drop shot, but I want the bait to sit close to the bottom. So instead of throwing a short leader drop shot, I will throw this. And this is a little bit easier and, in my opinion, better to drag around than a drop shot. Easier to manage your line as well. So Tokyo Rig is a win for me. I'm a big fan and would recommend that you use it even in the salt. So give it a try, see what you think, man. I'm sure that you have some issues to deal with when it comes to rust, but that's going to be the case with any type of rig that you're using. So give it a try. Losing Big Fish says drop shot or Wacky Rig. I would say drop shot, because what you can do is throw a long leader and Wacky Rig on the drop shot. So personally, I think the drop shot is just a little bit more versatile, but a Wacky Rig can be deadly if you're fishing around um, more isolated pieces of cover. Okay, so if there's a lay down tree, for example, a Wacky Rig is a much better way to go, in my opinion. If it's shallow water, I will throw that weightless, and that for me is probably 80% of the time. If it's a little bit deeper, I will throw a weighted Wacky Rig, and that way you can work the bait a little bit quicker. You can cover just a little bit more water with a weighted Wacky Rig. You're going to get that quicker fall, and you can lift and drop a little bit more than just pitching to the same exact spot with a weightless Wacky Rig, and letting that thing slowly shimmy down, where you know that fish are already hanging out. Whereas a drop shot and a weighted Wacky Rig are baits that you can cover more water with. You can be more productive with longer casts. Okay. Hopefully that kind of answers your question. Matthew Acevedo, what's up, man? How you doing? Good to see you in here. Daniel says, just message you and Matt, or just message you, Matt, and looked back at, and looked. You're here. All right. You guys are chitting and chatting. Zapu also makes a Jica Rig, says Matt, called the RPZ. Yeah, not surprised. I do think that the Jica Rig is underutilized. It was popular for a couple years maybe, but I don't know why it went out of style. But the Tokyo rig is one that also came into style a couple years ago and just isn't talked about quite as much now as it was, say, 2 years ago. So Solo X Fury says, do you prefer a bait that will float when you rig the Tokyo rig, like a Z-Man Elaztech plastic? Sometimes. So I would say, generally speaking, um, yes. That's hard to answer totally straightforward because there's so many different plastics that I use. Um, but yeah, I do prefer that, especially if I'm moving the bait slowly. If I want the bait to do some of the work for me, and I'm not just quickly pitching, shaking it and then working it back and moving. Um, if I am working an area more methodically, perhaps dragging the Tokyo rig, um, or pitching it and letting it sit on bottom for a second, then yeah, I find that a floating plastic definitely does do better. And if you're fishing in the salt, uh, where the variety of species that you can be fishing for is a little bit more broad, and you're dealing with toothy critters more frequently, then I would pretty much always recommend an Elaztech style bait. So that's up to you, but yeah, I don't think there's any issue with throwing a floating bait on the Tokyo rig because it's going to be weighted, right? So I think it just adds a little bit more action and flotation, and you're keeping the rig close to the bottom anyway. So cool thing about a Tokyo rig is it's like a hybrid between a lot of presentations. You can straight swim a Tokyo rig with a swim bait on it or with a creature style bait, and it will be like you're fishing either a wobble head or a heavier jig head down on bottom, say, along the rocks. So definitely do recommend it. Bruce Nichols in the house. What's up, man? How you doing? Thank you, Daniel, for telling Matt that I was streaming. Matt says, yeah, you're right about the Jica rig, but I like it more than the free rig, but use both. Definitely works better in grass for me. Yeah, honestly, I probably prefer the Tokyo rig over the Jica rig in grass. Um, I like the Jica rig kind of for a little bit of a do everything presentation, but slightly better around rock, um, in lieu of a super short leader drop shot. Okay. I throw a drop shot a lot around rocks and in open water where there's, say, sand or muddy bottoms, um, anything like that that's a little bit more bare. And I will throw the Jica rig there as well, where maybe you'd throw a wobble head. So, guys, 8 people in here, 3 thumbs up right now. Um, as I said about 5 minutes ago, we're just going to kind of leave this open forum right now because I don't have anything new to show you on this stream. I did just order from Tackle Warehouse the other day and should have that coming in the next week or two. They say that they're backed up due to the holidays, so I don't know exactly when that order is going to show up, but I'm pretty excited about it. Did spend about 150 bucks. Did not end up buying a swim bait rod this go around because I dilly dallied for way too long, and that Dobbins Fury 806 passed me up, and and I also couldn't decide if I wanted kind of that medium sized swim bait rod or something that could handle baits even a little bit heavier than that because I believe it's like a 4 to 8 ounce rod. And so I've really got my eye on the Daiwa DX swim bait rod. Probably going to get the extra heavy, which is more like a 3 to 10 ounce rod. So that one should be able to cover my needs for anything in that mid range to heavy range. Um, anything from say 6 to 10 inch baits, and its sweet spot should be right in that like 4 to 6 ounce range, uh, maybe even a little bit heavier than that. So I think that will probably suit my needs best. And that rod was not on sale, so there really wasn't much incentive for me to pick it up from Tackle Warehouse at this time of year. I think I went out of my way to buy pretty much all stuff that is on sale. And I mentioned last week when I streamed that Jackal was almost exclusively, like, all their stuff was 30% off. So I went out of my way to buy kind of a lot of stuff from Jackal, and you will see that when I unbox that package. So feel free to participate in the chat, ask any questions that you have, whether it's a this or that, a must or bust, kind of anything that you guys have in mind or want to talk about, any questions that you might have, or just opinions in general. I told you guys in the first couple minutes that this is a time of year where I am really starting to think ahead about next year and get my tackle organized and think about, say, the 10 or so baits that I really want to make a point to fish next year. So that will probably be a topic um, in the next couple of live streams when I'm not doing an unboxing, is setting aside some baits that I want to mention that I've picked up over the last year and not put to use, either because the time wasn't right, or because I forgot about them, but want to make a point to use and really figure out whether it has a legitimate place in my arsenal for this year and moving forward. So there's a bunch of baits like that, but um, I don't have them all out right now, and I don't want to be racking my brain and digging through a million boxes at the same time. So let's just kind of keep this open forum and see what you guys are feeling like talking about. Any questions that you guys have, um, controversial opinions, anything like that. So, by the way, these, in my opinion, are some of the best non-alcoholic beverages that are not like mainstream sodas. This aranciata flavor of this Pellegrino is freaking delicious. Matt says, any fishing lately or pretty much done for the season? I am done for the season. We've gotten snow now 3 times in the last couple weeks. So while we had a late start to the winter and an unseasonably warm fall and early winter, I told you guys about that fire that we had here just 2 weeks ago. It has snowed a handful of times since then, and all of my waters are now frozen over. So I will go fly fishing a couple times between now and open water season, which will probably be late March, early April for me. And so hopefully I will get to put some of my hand tied flies to work and get on some good trout between now and then. But otherwise, no, now it is reorganizing time and getting kind of a solid inventory on what I've got, what I forgot about, what I meant to use last year but did not, and what I've picked up recently with the intent to use next year. So that all crossed with what I had a lot of success on this past year and the year before will kind of make up what become my go-tos for 2022, at least to start out. So yeah, we'll talk more about that in the next couple of streams, because that's going to be a lot of what goes on in my head for the next couple of months, is just kind of uh, figuring out what direction I want to go, what bodies of water I'm going to prioritize this year, how I'm going to fish, and what baits I want to use. So Corey says, I just got more Megabass Uoze swim jigs. Opinion on those? I actually don't own any, so I don't have an opinion on them, other than the fact that I understand they are really well made. So I wish I could tell you, man. I just can't. So um, I think it's a cool concept in that it is a swim jig and spinner bait combined. You know, it's got that underspin blade, right? And I know that they have an awesome following and that they're really well made. So I don't have anything against them other than their price tag at like 12 bucks a pop. They're pretty expensive swim jigs. And just looking at them, it seems like that wire would break relatively quickly. I could be totally wrong about that. So let me know in the comments how firm that wire is, where that cross section is between action and durability, because I don't quite know. Now, a swim jig that is new to the market that I made a point to pick up a couple um, of a few months ago, really at the tail end of when I would throw it. So I only got the chance to use it like once or twice, but I really like the way that it's built and the way that it runs in the water is the Evergreen Grass Ripper swim jig. And this guy retails quite a bit cheaper. This is like $7. So I say quite a bit cheaper, but it's actually not cheap. Um, I'm a big fan of most things Evergreen. I think they make really good stuff, and this is essentially very similar to the jackhammer in the gauge of hook and the exact skirting color patterns and the fact that it's hand tied. But this has a really nice weed guard on it that is firm but not too firm. It comes a little bit longer than is necessary straight out of the package. It's got that same double wire bait keeper on the hook that the jackhammer does. Really good paint jobs on the heads, but it has that unique head shape that is really good for coming through grass, but also letting run lower in the water column if you so choose. So, um, really well made swim jig, and I'm impressed with it so far. So, swim jigs are one of those things that I have always kind of skimped on for no particular reason, just over the years, as were for a while finesse jigs. You know, I used to throw like the Bitsy Bug almost exclusively, and and I used to throw the Strike King. Oh, what's their swim jig called? The uh, I don't even know what it's tour grade swim jig. I think it's called. It's got a really thin nose on it, pretty flat head, and for me, it worked well. It's got a pretty light weed guard, but they're cheap swim jigs. They've got a light wire hook on them, and I like to throw them in light weights. So I decided to kind of start branching out a little bit more with my swim jigs, and the Grass Ripper is definitely going to be toward the top of my list for this upcoming year. I picked up a couple in the 3/8 ounce this last go around, like a couple months ago when I first got them, but I do have a couple in my cart at Discount Tackle right now. I haven't placed my order for January just yet, and I'm gonna get a couple in the 1/4 ounce size for that same purpose that I used to use the Strike King tour grade swim jig. I still do use it, but um, I like to throw a 1/4 ounce swim jig high in the water column, reel it pretty fast, uh, where it's essentially the same strategy, same way that I would fish a spinner bait, just um, barely subsurface, where I can see the bait coming, but it's going to be a lot more subtle of a presentation than a spinner bait when it comes to vibration and flash. So it's just profile and displacement of water depending on the trailer that you're using. I do mostly prefer to use swim baits, followed by say cross style trailers. Um, Anything from like a Rage Menace grub or a um, a rage bug, and kind of anything in that range of, say, subtle to medium kick. I don't throw a lot of super subtle like beavers, and I don't throw a lot of super aggressive like a rage craw or anything like that. So anyway, sorry, I'm now starting to get a little bit behind on these comments, and that's a good thing. So let me just try and catch up a little bit. You guys keep them coming. All right. Daniel says Dobbins has some boom boom rods on a great deal right now on Blowout. Interesting. From where? Where can you buy them, Daniel? He says only some models left, but it's a $260 rod for $140. Sounds like a good deal, man, for sure. That is a blowout price. Solo X Fury says, what is your rig setup for fishing tubes? Favorite tube baits / hooks? Okay. I don't fish tubes a lot, but I will throw them on two different setups. One, I do throw on a spinning setup, and that is like a 6'6" medium heavy. So I know that's a little bit unconventional, but with a tube, I do like to snap a tube, and so if I'm throwing a lighter weight, I will throw a spinning rod so I can get a little bit more casting distance out of it, and then I will drag and snap a tube. And so for a long time, one of my just go-to setups was the Strike King 3.5-inch coffee tube, and also the Strike King tube head. So they use a Gamakatsu hook in that tube jig, and it's really well made, and they're pretty affordable. So that for a long time, that was kind of my go-to setup, and still is in a lot of instances. But I've tried to branch out a little bit more, and this year I've picked up the Berkeley Max Scent tubes. I also have occasionally thrown the Z-Man Easy tubes. Those are super thin plastic and obviously made from Elaztech, so they float. You get a little bit different action out of those guys, whereas the Strike King tube is going to be a little bit more traditional in construction and action. But a tube that is underrated, in my opinion, and maybe I should try to find them for you because they're worth talking about for a minute, are the Kitech. Let's see if I can find these in less than a minute. I think that's going to be a negative Ghost Rider. And that's a shame because I wanted to be able to show you what it looks like, but so it's called the Salty Core Tube, and I believe that's what it's called. But literally, it is what it sounds like, and it is a tube that is a little bit larger in profile. I believe it's a 4-inch. They also make them in a smaller size, like a 2.75, and I do have them both and like them both quite a bit. And they are a totally solid tube with a salty core. So it's got a more durable plastic outer shell and then a fully salted inner core. And it is plugged on the butt of the tube. So you can actually rig it backwards with the eye of your hook coming out the butt and being hidden in the skirting material, and then the tip of your hook coming through the nose, and that will cause a backsliding action for the bait. So you pitch in and it will slide backwards and you pull it. it will pulse a little bit more like a crawdad, and is a really interesting action. I rig those almost exclusively on weightless EWG hooks. So I use more like a um, I use Gamakatsu hooks for those. Sometimes I will opt for a super line, um, but I go with like a 4/0 on the bigger one, and then like a 3/0 on the smaller one. And those are awesome tubes. You should definitely give them a look. Kitech makes them, and really, really good. So between Strike King making that coffee scent, Kitech making that shrimp scent and a really unique tube that is not hollow, and now Berkeley making the Max scent tubes, those will probably be my main go-to tubes for 2022. And yeah, the other setup that I do throw a tube on is just like a standard 7 foot medium. Actually, maybe it's a medium heavy uh, bait casting setup. And for that, I'm throwing more like a standard 12 or 15 pound fluorocarbon. Whereas on the other one, on the spinning setup, I do like to throw like a 20 pound braid to a short leader that is maybe in the range of 12 pound fluorocarbon. Matt says, dude, I don't get how the Japanese catch bass in snow from the bank with freaking swim baits. Literally makes me feel like I'm making excuses. Uh, been seeing a bunch of pics on Instagram of catches. Interesting, man. Yeah. Um, I guess. Well, what kind of swim baits are they using, man? Because theoretically, swim baits do perform really well in cold weather and cold water, but ordinarily it's when they are fished really slowly along the bottom. It's just that time of year where fish are super lethargic and are not going to chase. So you would think either a really slow, methodical retrieve or something in a high percentage area where you're working the bait erratically right in front of the fish might cause a reaction. But yeah, it's definitely not like traditional swim bait season. So makes you wonder about that. Crankdowns mostly, huh? Interesting. Yeah, I don't know about that, dude. Corey says the wire on that Uoze swimmer is tough. The blades fall off because of the split ring um, connecting the blade is tiny. Hmm. And he also says the grass ripper is his favorite swim jig. Well, right on. Good to hear that. Matt says the only three swim jigs that I use are the OSP Slipper, Depths Matsuraba, and the Depths Violator. Well, um, don't know what to say. Fancy pants. You use a lot of lesser known stuff, and everybody knows that. So I bet you everybody else in here doesn't use any of those baits except maybe one of them. And it's probably the OSP Slipper, but still, yeah, most people don't use those swim jigs, but I'm glad to hear that you like them. Daniel says the Strike King Tour Grade or the Hack Attack Heavy Cover are good ones. Yeah, man. Mr. Mackey late to the party. Okay. Yeah, a little bit, not too bad, man. Bruce says, any thoughts on the Terminator jigs? No, not really. Other than the fact that a lot of them come with really heavy hooks. And generally speaking, I don't like really, really big hooks. So, Dirty Jigs does that in a lot of their jigs too. So I don't use Terminator jigs. There are some dirty jigs that I do use, and I apologize. I don't really have any thoughts on Terminator jigs. I can't speak to that, so I'm not going to really answer that. Mr. Mackey says Smallies love tubes. Okay. Yeah, they do. So, okay, Dobbins Boom Boom rods are on sale on Dobbin's actual website. They're a Champion XP rod that is green, custom for the Boom Boom. Yep, okay. And Matt says the Kitech tubes are the only ones that I use. Yeah, they're awesome, for sure. And so much easier to rig with and deal with. Totally. So you guys are on opposite sides of the country, huh? Oh, you're absolutely right about that, Solo X Fury, that the profile of a tube is very squid-like, uh, which is why you think they like it. Yeah, I think you ought to take a look at some baits by Nikko, Nikko. They make an octopus bait that is made from an Elaztech style material that is super squid-like, and I have a pack or two of them, and I think they're pretty awesome. So take a look at those, man. Matt says the Japanese are tuning their swim baits like jerk baits. Um, Never thought of doing that for the cold, but could be super effective. Yeah, I agree with that, man. Beef felt fishing, favorite swim jig, trailer, rage tail, or paddle tail? Um, Paddle tail. So, in general, in my opinion, a swim jig is used to imitate a bait fish, right? So, I like to throw a paddle tail swim bait the vast majority of the time. But if they're looking for a little bit more aggressive of an action, or I'm going to fish the bait differently, then I will go to like a beaver or craw style trailer. Okay. If I want to fish the bait high in the water column without fishing it really quickly, then sometimes a cross style bait will allow the swim jig to rise and stay up high in the water column. Or if I'm looking to do the opposite and let this thing fall to the bottom, dead stick it for a couple seconds, and then kind of yo-yo a swim jig up off the bottom, then I will use more of a flapping style trailer. And I used to throw, say, a Rage Menace grub rigged vertically with that really subtle kicking action, but I do still find myself using Kitech style paddle tails most frequently. Okay. Okay. And I will say to Solo X Fury, this is a bait that you need to have in your arsenal. Kitech makes the swing impact fat in saltwater specific colors, and they are more durable than the traditional Kitech soft plastic is. So still has a decent amount of tail kick to it, but these guys are more durable, and I'm a big fan of them. So let me show you in comparison. Actually, that one's not even the saltwater. Man, I should know where they are. I'm a mess right now. I told you guys I don't have my stuff organized like I want to have it. My stuff is all over the place. If you guys saw in the thumbnail for this video, this is just a portion of the soft plastics that were out in my garage. There's probably 40 or 50 bags sitting here right now. and they're just all out of place. So the Swing Impact Fat in the saltwater edition has a little bit more subtle of a tail kick, but is a much more durable soft plastic. Of course, they make them in saltwater colors. So for me, I really only use the pearl white and the chartreuse in white colors um, because I think they cross over pretty well, but they're awesome, man. Yeah, Matt, you're absolutely right about the Bass Patrol swim jigs or football jigs. Sorry. Here's that tour grade swim jig, by the way, that I was talking about. Ignore the chatterbait blade that I put on here, but as you can see, it's got a pointy head that is pretty narrow, and then it's got that light weed guard on it, light wire hook. I don't love this bait keeper, but it's a cheap swim jig, and in the past has worked pretty well for me. So Matt is referring to the Bass Patrol football jigs, and I like these a lot too. They make these and sell them cheap. They're like $3 a pop. They've got a recessed eye on them. You've got a good weed guard straight out of the pack that, in my opinion, does not need to be trimmed. And they tie these with living rubber. Some of them have a living rubber mixed with a lesser amount of silicone for color selection, but these are really high quality and cheap football jigs. So totally agree with that, man. In fact, I think I have a couple in my cart at Discount Tackle right now, even though I picked up a handful not that long ago. So that is quickly becoming like my go-to football jig that I'm not tying myself. Belligerent says, we're here for the chatterbait talk. Well, go ahead and ask me any question that you have about chatterbaits, man. Happy to chat about chatterbaits. Solo X Fury says, do you perform any modifications to your jerk baits? What do you think of the Rapala X Wrap and the Lucky Craft pointer? So I don't perform a lot of modifications to my swim jig or to my jerk baits because I have so many different jerk baits. So I pretty much just use different jerk baits for different situations. But yes, there are some. For example, the oh, they're across the room. That's the one box I didn't bring over here. But the new Strike King KVD 100 size jerk bait. I like the KVD jerk baits from Strike King just fine, right? The 200 is not my favorite because it's a 2-hook model that's a little bit bigger. Um, and I don't throw a lot of baits like that. Um, but the 300 is a 3-hook jerk bait, more of that standard size. I think it's a really good value. A bait that I do use. It dives a little bit deeper than others do for its size, but they just released the 100 size, which is really like the equivalent of like a Pointer 78 or an X-Wrap 8, and it is advertised to run some 2 to 4 feet deep. It's a shallow runner, and they say it suspends, but it doesn't suspend. It's a floating jerk bait, and to me, I don't prefer that action. There are very few floating jerk baits that I use, and the ones that I do are mostly Rapala and our balsa wood jerk baits that I will swim on a straight retrieve more than rip. So I do add suspend dots to those. I will mostly only change out the hooks if I'm looking to change the action in terms of float versus sink. If it's not suspending quite right, I will go to hooks and split rings first before I start adding suspend strips or suspend dots. Though I do have both and will use both, just not all that frequently. As for the X-Wrap and the pointer, I love those jerk baits. I have a lot of them, like a lot. Um, and I use them pretty frequently. In fact, this whole section up top is full of X-Wraps in the size 10, and this whole section down here is filled with Lucky Craft Pointer 100s. These are the Pointer XR98s, and I've got a lot of them. Okay, now they are very similar baits. The X-Wrap comes with that feathered treble hook, which I like on the rear. And they make slightly different sounds because the X-Wrap is a little bit quieter. The pointer is a very obnoxiously loud jerkbait. But both of them, the reason I say that they're similar is that they're both right in that 4-inch size, come with 2 hooks on them, which is not necessarily my favorite. Those are 2 of the exceptions that I do make for jerkbaits with 2 hooks because I think they're so well made, are very durable, good looking baits with an aggressive action. That is the main thing about those 2 baits, is that they have a very aggressive action. To me, they are more late spring to, I guess, all the way through the fall, but I would not throw them early in the season when you've got cold water, because they have such an aggressive darting action, and are a little bit louder in nature. So I can't knock on the baits. I only throw them when targeting slightly smaller fish in warm water. Um, and that's my opinion. Okay. Nothing wrong with the baits. Got a lot of them. Brian says, what new baits are you pumped to try out? Just got some OG Tiny Fours. Have you thrown the cover scat yet? Good question. And I'm going to have to answer that one in a separate stream in terms of what new baits I'm pumped to try out, because there's a lot of them. And I've made a point to pick up a lot of them already and am still kind of rounding that out. So I mentioned earlier that that will be a topic of conversation for another time, in terms of baits that I'm most excited to use this upcoming year. But Solo X Fury, to go back to your last question, this is a bait. This is the Pointer 100 in the H3, so 3-hook version that they just put out maybe a couple seasons ago, and I didn't make a point to pick up until this year because I like the pointer so much. And use it a lot, but I don't like the fact that it comes with 2 hooks. So the fact that they made this with 3 hooks on it was awesome to me. And so I went out of my way to pick 1 or 2 up, but because I've already got so many of the original Pointer 100s, the Pointer 78s, even the Pointer 65s, I didn't replace my entire collection with them. Now, to go back to Brian's question, the OG Tiny 4 is one that I'm going to pick up. I'm really excited about that. Probably more than I am the Rapala DT8, both of which will have their place and be awesome baits. But the OG Slim originally just came in a 6, right? So it's a 6-foot diver, flat-sided crankbait, really good at what it does, but does run 6 feet deep. So there are some places where that is a little bit deep. You're more prone to hanging up. It comes with really, technically those hybrid style hooks, but they're pretty wide gap. And so I've found that they snag pretty easily. So I changed the hooks on them, but I'm really excited to have the Tiny Fours. 1, because they're smaller, but 2, because they dive shallower, and I'll be able to target fish in shallower water on those. So yeah, excited about those. As for the cover scat, I have not tried them. No. Heard great things. But for it being such a do nothing bait, it's hard for me to imagine where I would use it, um, and what it would replace in my arsenal. So no, I just haven't brought myself to pick them up yet, but there are a handful of baits like that on the market. Not like the cover scat, but rather that that are very popular that I just haven't picked up yet because I'm hesitant. Bruce says I found $150, 150 plus new in packages for $100 locally. I keep thinking about buying them. 150 in what? What kind of baits are you talking about, man? The Terminator jigs? If that's what you're thinking of, that's a lot of jigs to pick up. So I don't know what to tell you, man. And I think you could spend $100 on a lot of other stuff that you might be a little bit more likely to use. Yeah, Solo X Fury definitely give some consideration to Nico. They make some really cool stuff. Their tadpole is really unique. Um, Great little drop shot bait. And yeah, that octopus, the crab that they make a 6-inch crab that is literally uh, a massive crab. And I don't know exactly how you'd rig that thing on like a gigantic octopus hook or something, but yeah, they've got some really interesting ideas, and the way that those baits are uh, powdered and scented is cool too. They're high quality baits. They're just a little bit pricey. So when you look at like their craw or their swim baits, it's hard to justify the price tag on them because they cost so much, and you also need to factor in that they're a little bit tricky to rig. So yeah, um, but I think there are a couple retailers that do sell Nico products, so you don't necessarily have to load your cart up um, and buy direct from Nico. So just keep that in mind. Thinking about getting the Elaztech tubes, yeah, the EZ tubes is what they're called, and the TRD and the ticklers are awesome for sure. Yeah, Z-Man makes some really good stuff, even all the way down to, all their Ned baits are sweet. Really love the TRD bugs. Quite a bit more durable than the TRD craws, which for a while was just like my go-to Ned rig and micro jig trailer. But I found that those claws wear out pretty quickly and and need replacing. But that's relative because compared to other small baits, it's not even close. They're still very durable. Solo X Fury says, "Yeah, I got some Kitex. Just been waiting for a decent day to go fish them on a small swim bait jig head. Great recommendation. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. Um, those are pretty awesome, man. Yeah, on a 3.8-inch Kitex saltwater on like a 1/8, maybe a 1/4 inch, quarter ounce exposed jig would be perfect for those things, like a 3/0 hook. Yeah, and you're right that Z-Man Elaztech does hold on to Procure scent. So not a bad idea, especially that trophy bass scent is a really good one. But for the salt, they also make a bunch of really good ones. That anchovy scent, and even just like their standard garlic. Procure is a really good brand for sure. Brian says, when are you going to do a bait room tour? Well, I've done something kind of like that. I'll show you guys kind of what I have here. But as for me turning the camera, I don't know how much you guys actually want to see what's in this room. with just how much of a mess it is, because I will be embarrassed and you will probably laugh. Um, but it's a total mess. I do need to do some recycling and some reorganizing, putting things in new boxes. But I will explain to you what is on the wall and why, what is in all of these boxes. There are two of these high on each side, so you'll see there. Um, and then I've got boxes in all of these as well. And then I've got shoe boxes full of plastics. And yeah, I've got my Z-Man stuff dedicated in a little bit more creative packaging. So I can show you guys that stuff for sure, man. Matt says, never leave home without the Procure. I don't know why people don't like it when it's worked for me and tons of other people. I know that like to saltwater fish. I use a trophy bass. Yep, for sure. And the shredder crab and bloodworms for saltwater. Okay. Felt fishing. I am a bank guy. I rarely fish from a boat. Um, Someday in the future, that is probably in the cards for me. But I have a wife and 3 kids, and so our third garage is has been and is still housing an extra collector's car of mine. It's a 77 Camaro LT that has been in my family for since the year that it was made. My mom's mom bought it brand new in 77, kept it for a long time, handed it down to her son, my uncle, who was a mechanic for his entire career. And just 4 or 5 years ago, he offered it up to me. So I flew out to Oregon, picked it up from him, and drove it back here. And it's sitting in my third garage where, say, a boat would sit. But I am not a boat guy at this point in time. That could very well be in my future in the next couple of years. But for now, I am a bank fisherman. All right. So I fish anywhere from small ponds to, say, reservoirs and lakes up to 1,500 acres. Not much bigger than that. Here in Colorado, we don't have any like big water. So even if and when I do get a boat, it's going to be small, and it's either going to be electric or it's going to be a very light duty boat, probably an aluminum rig, um, and something that has a low power motor, just because there are horsepower restrictions on most of the lakes here, and there's really no need for it when the furthest run that I'm going to be making would take 5 minutes. Um, we're talking a couple miles from one side to the other of the lake, so there's no need for me to have a fiberglass boat with a giant 250 motor on it. There's no reason for me to be able to go 70 miles an hour in a bass boat. So Matt says, I got some Bkk hooks on the way from Tackle Warehouse. Wanted to try some out, and they had some sizes that are kind of hard to get as well. Yeah, again, we talked about Bkk, but that is a brand of hooks that is from Japan, but is up and coming, has a really good reputation, and one that I'm curious about too. But there are a number of brands like that that have made their way over from Japan that I've not really ventured into, just because I've already got so much confidence and so much stock and money in Gamakatsu and owner that there's not much of a reason for me to venture from those all that much. Daniel says 77 year of the Bandit TA, I believe. Right on. Bruce Nichols got back into fishing a few months ago. Limited on gear. I have a ton of soft baits, around 25 hard lures, one chatterbait, very limited jigs, and about 12 spinner baits. Okay. Yeah, nothing wrong with that, man. A lot of spinner baits relative to your collection. That's interesting. Um, yeah, maybe we should talk offline, and I can help supplement your collection a little bit with some things to experiment with this upcoming year. I like to help people out where I can. So, um, and I'm also just excited about the fact that you just got back into fishing a couple months ago. That's really exciting. It's harder for me to be able to ship you rods, for example, but theoretically, I could hook you up with a reel and a bunch of baits. So maybe we should talk. I'm not trying to say that you asked for it by any means. I just like to give back and be generous where I can. Um, over the course of any given swim swim uh fishing season, I will give away at least a few dozen lures just because I meet people out on the water when I'm fishing. And say if I met you, for example, and we're talking about where we're fishing, what we're catching, what we're using, things like that. If I'm having success on a jackhammer chatterbait and they're absolutely destroying it, and I see that you've got an off-brand chatterbait or an original chatterbait by Z-Man, I would probably just go out of my way to give you a jackhammer or a different version of a slightly better chatterbait, um, as well as some trailers or some soft plastics, just because. And yeah, so let's talk, man. Feel free to send me an email at hooksetsarethree18@gmail.com. Or hit me up on Instagram if you're on there. It's just hooksets.rfree, spelled just like it is here on YouTube. And I'd be happy to talk about it. Daniel says, my uncle has an A78 Z28 with a teardrop hood. That is badass. Uh, Bruce says 77 is a good year. They went to poop in looks after 81. Yeah, I know that they did change after that. So you're right. I like the look of mine, though it is like it's a pretty bright yellow color. But my uncle did some pretty cool work to the interior to make it look pretty badass as well. He left a lot original, but he did change the seats and the ceiling, as well as a couple other little things. Uh, Maybe at some point I'll show you guys pictures um, of that car. It's pretty sweet. Matt says, "Yeah, Gamakatsu trebles are good. Have some myself of the bronze ones and the regular round bend. Yeah, I kind of have a wide variety of Gamakatsu. But when it comes to treble hooks, I do also prefer the bronze ones, um, and also the regular round bend ones. I don't throw the EWG ones a lot just because um, they're not a very wide gap for being an extra wide gap. So I throw Mustad triple grips a fair amount when it comes to EWGs. I like that short shank. Daniel says, I would say 5 to 10 jigs to start out would be plenty. Generally speaking, yeah, you probably only need a few of each variety, but you don't need to go way out of your way. I think having some finesse jigs, having some swim jigs, and having some like all purpose casting style jigs, arky head jigs would work really well. You don't necessarily need football jigs. Um, but there's definitely going to be a time and a place where it will perform best for you. So yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. 10 jigs to start out is probably plenty. Bruce says, I have plenty of rods and a few decent reels. Chatterbait is the Walmart OG. Yeah. You could probably upgrade on the chatterbaits, man. But also, if you've only got like, what'd you say, 20 or 25 hard baits, it's worth us talking about what you have and where you're fishing, what could serve you well, depending on your fishing style and how you plan to grow your arsenal over time as well. Because for me, 6 years ago, I was probably in the same spot as you, but I've acquired a lifetime's worth of tackle since then, and it's not necessarily slowing down. So, yeah, what can you do? It's the addiction that we all have for sure. Shark Boy in the house. What's up, dude? How you doing? Yo, Ben Dover. I shot a basketball and I bricked, hit a kid in the face. Okay, that sucks. Sounds like it should be on that Instagram page. Kids getting hurt. You guys ever watch those videos? It's pretty gnarly, um, and also hilarious at the same time. But very interesting comment that you're leaving in here. Um, that you missed a basketball shot and hit a kid in the face. That's too bad, man. Shark Boy and Ben Dover. I don't know that I recognize you guys. Um, Although I think Ben Dover is a pretty hilarious name, um, because I see what you did there. But are you guys fishermen, or did you somehow just stumble across my live stream and are just in here trolling? Because this, as you can see, is a pretty aggressive bass fishing channel. Um, in terms of what we're talking about, what's behind me, and everything like that. So I will show you guys my collection here in 1 second, um, just because it was requested, and it'll help fill the time for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. But Solo X Fury says, "Do you have a free shipping code for discount tackle?" Staring at a semi-full cart for a while now. Uh, no, I do not. Unfortunately, you do need to spend $60 to get free shipping at Discount Tackle. So that is what I do every single time I shop there. And I do the same thing, a semi full cart right now. My cart has 8 things in it and is sitting at $58. How annoying is that? I guess you have to spend $59. So it tells me only 86 cents away from free shipping. So, um, yeah. Anyway, um, yeah, $60 is what you got to spend to get free shipping from there. I do not have uh, codes for you. They do not do coupon codes at all. That is just the way that it goes from Discount Tackle, because a lot of their stuff is discounted all the time. So if you guys are ever going to shop at Discount Tackle, click the link that I just dropped in the chat. That will take you directly to their website. Won't do anything different, but the cookies will make it such that Discount Tackle knows that I sent you their way, uh, which makes them happy and earns me a small commission, small percentage of the sale. So helps me out as well as my relationship with Discount Tackle, and I do appreciate it anytime you were looking to make a purchase from Discount Tackle. So I'll tell you right now, I've got, like I said, 8 things in the cart. I've got those Bass Patrol um, football jigs, like the one I showed you, in smaller sizes, 1/4 ounce, 2/0 size. Got some Rapala DT Fat threes in there. As I told you, I've got the Evergreen Grass Ripper swim jigs in the 1/4 ounce size. Those are a little bit cheaper than what you'd find normally, but I think they're only discounted by 10% or something. I've got some of the mule fishing horse flies. So I've told you guys about the mule fishing donkey tail juniors and the regular donkey tails. I'm a big fan of these baits, and I will tell you right now, Solo X Fury, if you're not familiar with this company either, you might want to check them out. They're a little bit small, so I don't know if they would be ideal for the species that you're going after, but these are made from an elastomer style plastic as well, and they're a really good deal. So check this out. This bait right here is only 1.6 inches in size, but it's a paddle tail swim bait. It's got a good action to it, and it's super durable. So they make this in a 2.8, which I have, and a 1.6, and it's a paddle tail swim bait. You know, that's like a morning dawn style color. And then they just released a horsefly, which is just like a mayfly imitation, and awesome little pan fishing, ice fishing, multi-species fishing type of bait. But again, very durable. And if you're going to fish from Discount Tackle, they've got both the donkey tails and the horse flies there. So yeah, check those out. Definitely worth a look. I've got a couple packs of the horse flies in my cart, and then one of the G-Rat Pistol Pete. Probably shouldn't have said that, because by the time that I check out, that'll be sold out. They only have one color in stock right now, and it's pretty cool looking. It's their IU color, pretty natural bait fish, baby bass type of color pattern, a little bit shaddy, and I like the look of it for sure. So Matt says, I finally got my Citizens in the mail. Man, I really like them. Never used them, but man, I really like the feel of the bait. Has a lot of tail, so definitely gonna thump, and it's a perfect snack size. Well, you say snack size, but it's still a 6-inch bait, right? The Citizen, are they 6 and then 7.5, or what are the sizes that they make them in again? Matt says, have you ever tried the Storm Largo Shad paddle tail? The Largo Shad. This guy? I only picked it up this year, so I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I will show you it, and a couple of my initial impressions. I know that it's got a pretty decent reputation, and it does come in some really interesting printed color patterns like this bluegill, but it has this tail which can be separated, um, but it's going to move a little bit more water, create kind of a bubble trail. As you see, it's a relatively stiff plastic. Okay, so it is a little bit more speed sensitive, probably a little bit more saltwater friendly or warm water friendly. It's got a decent action, but what I found is that even though it does have a belly slot and a top slit, so it looks like it would rig really well on like a flashy swimmer or a beast hook. I found that it did not, um, and that was perhaps just my error in rigging it right, but it was hard for me to rig these things right. So I think your best bet is to rig this on just a standard round ball jig head, uh, which of course I don't have sitting right in front of me, but doesn't matter. I think this is a pretty good swim bait, but I just don't know how often I'm going to work it into my arsenal. It doesn't have a unique scent or anything. In fact, it smells really plasticky. Um, I think for something with a similar profile and action, I will probably throw like the 6 cents Divine swim baits more often. Um, it's got say the softness of more like the 6 cents whale, whereas that Divine swim bait is pretty stiff, but it has the action of like the Divine swim bait. So just something to keep in mind. It's a really good looking bait, but I don't quite know what to think of it. I know that like Jacob Wheeler and some other people have spoken pretty well about the Largo Shad, and and it had me curious enough to try it. So I picked them up, but I just haven't really used them yet. Well, I used them a few times, and they just weren't quite swimming right, and I didn't give them the time of day, for being honest. So Bruce says spinning rod is a Fenwick 7 foot medium light with a Penn Conflict 2500 reel. Kind of beat up. Need to find spool shims. Bait casters that I use are a Daiwa 7 foot medium with a loose custom XP. And the other is a Team Loose 7.2 medium heavy with a loose Super Duty. Okay. I mean, yeah, sounds like a decent little three combo arsenal that you have there, in terms of being able to do a wide variety of different things. But of course, at some point, you will need to step up and like get a second spinning setup that's more of a medium or medium heavy spinning, and then something a bit heavier on the bait casting side. A heavy power, fast action to be able to cover anything from jigs to flipping to frogging to small swim baits. That 7.2 medium heavy will do a lot for you, but the Super Duty will probably be best on a heavy power rod. Whereas I could give you a reel to go on that 7.2 medium heavy. So anyway, Bruce, yeah, let's talk, man. Ravi, namaste. You're from India. Well, welcome, dude. Yeah, today's Sunday. It's 11:47 in the morning there. That's crazy. It's 10:49 p.m. here where I am, in Colorado in the US. And Bruce and Matthew, a bunch of other people are on the East Coast in the US where it is 12:49 a.m. So late night here, and we're all talking fishing. So what's up, Ravi? How you doing, man? Brian Waterman in the house. What is up, my man? Matt says, interesting. They have a nice swim to them. Reason I wanted to know. Yeah. But again, I think they're a little bit the type of bait where you need to fish them medium to medium fast. Um, so yeah, Solo X Fury out of here. Study time for you. Okay, no problem. Yeah. Feel free to join in anytime. Hopefully, we'll see you next week. But thanks for joining in. Thanks for asking good questions. As always, appreciate your support. Have a great rest of your night. And yeah, Russian bots. What are these fools in here? I think we've had a couple of these comments in here tonight. I don't know why that's happening, or who my stream is getting pushed out to when we've only got the normal, you know, plus or minus, 10 people on average. So we're up to 9 thumbs up. I appreciate you guys. We're doing just fine. We've been on here for almost an hour and a half, so I'll stay on just a little bit longer. Whatever you guys want to talk about, we can talk about for a couple more minutes before I dip out of here. But Bruce Nichols is out of here. Okay. You don't have to leave though, man. Bruce, why don't you ask me, um, or why don't you send me an email rather? I gave you my email address. I gave you my Instagram profile. Let's chat off stream and and see if we can make any upgrades to your arsenal, man. Daniel says you need to make some of us moderators and we'll get rid of the bots. Yeah, well, ordinarily I don't have that problem, but I certainly wouldn't mind making you guys moderators. I've just never done that before. So, is there a way for me to do that like while in stream? I don't think so. Probably need to do that outside. I because I know that some people do that. Like for example, the bait man Kevin Baxter has Rich Hellabass as his moderator. So um, I don't know how to do that right now. Yeah, I can just see the participants in the chat, but I whatever. I'll figure that out another time. No, Bruce, I'm not leaving quite yet, man. Um, Brian says, got me the smaller Dobbin swim bait rod. Sweet, dude. Um, someone was asking earlier. I don't know why I didn't answer the question. Do I throw Huddlestons? And I answered this not long ago, maybe a stream or two ago. Um, and the shorter answer is no, not yet. I have a couple of like the Huddleston weedless shads that I do use from time to time. Um, but in my opinion, that's not what I would consider a Huddleston, right? You know, this guy right here is not a traditional Huddleston. Um, you know, when it's just got a tiny, what, maybe 3 or 4 aught hook on there. And this is a 4 inch soft plastic bait. So, um, no, I have not gotten into Huddlestons just yet. I've really uh, put more money into the Savage Gear swim baits that have a wedge tail, but I've always felt like I'm kind of missing out. And so this year during Black Friday, I did opt to get an 8 inch Huddleston in the perch color. This is the top hook and the ROF 5. And yeah, I'm excited to throw it this upcoming year. It's a little bit heavy for my Dobbins Fury 795. So that is one bait of a few that I am going to make a point to pick up a slightly heavier swim bait setup for next season. And I have a couple of lakes where that 8 inch perch should get the attention of some really big smallies and um, some pretty solid largies. You know, here in Colorado, we don't come across giant fish all that often. Even though our state record largemouth is around 12 pounds and smallmouth is 7.5. I think it's a little bit more common to come into big smallies than it is big largies. Um, I think you could catch a 4 pound smallie easier than you could catch a 6 pound largie. So I am looking to target those class of fish with this 8 inch Huddleston in the perch pattern specifically. Bruce says, I'll hit you up. Okay. Email. Don't use Instagram. Still use AOL for email. Good Lord, man. Um, yeah, Facebook is just a platform that I am not really on anymore. Um, and I didn't really do anything with it. And this channel, Hooksets are free. Does have a page, but I never check it. And my personal Facebook page is one where I haven't posted in the better part of 6 or more years. So yeah, Daniel says you can do it in stream. Well, how the heck do I do it, man? Um, how do I make you a moderator? I would if I could. Oh, bam. Daniel T is now a moderator for your channel. Whoa. Matthew Acevedo is now a moderator for your channel. Hey guys, welcome to the moderating club. Um, for whatever that means. There's only 10 people in here. It's not like you need to be a moderator, but okay. Yeah, if you see any people spamming or acting a fool, do something about it. I don't know what powers you guys have as moderators, but don't go deleting random comments for no reason. I wish you could delete the sound of that barking spider that just came out of my body, because yikes. Um, that was bad. Mr. Mackey in here still spam, okay? Okay. Yeah, dropping okay after every comment. That's borderline spam. Michael Romero. How's it going, Tyler? Got on the live late. Have to watch the replay. No problem, man. Doing pretty well, thank you. It's been kind of a hodgepodge, random conversation type of night, but that's what I expected it to be. So no worries. Still good conversation with good people, nonetheless, and I'm happy to be here. So hope you're doing well. No, Daniel, I didn't even need to go to automated filters. I literally just in this live chat section next to your name, there's three dots. I could click it, and then where I could pin your message, or report a comment or delete a comment, put you in timeout if I needed to. There's also an option at the bottom to add that person as a moderator. So that's what I did. Matt says Dream Smashers and Texas Swimbait Silicone Shad, really good choices, and Real Prey Swimbait. Yeah, hadn't heard of them, but I did look up the Texas Swimbait Silicone Shad after you talked about it last time. Um, Definitely does look interesting. B Felt says I just picked up the 68 Special HUD. I'm in Indiana, so not known for giant bass, but I'm going for 4 and 5 pounders. Yep. And that was really on the top of my list for a long time as well. But to be honest, the price difference between, say, the 68 and the 8-inch is only like $5. And I know there's a weight difference, so you almost do have to step up your gear to be able to properly throw the 8-inch over the 6. But I've already got a decent amount of 6-inch swim baits, and I find that the drawing power of an 8-inch bait is quite a bit more significant than a 6-inch bait. And when it comes to 6-inch baits, that Megabass Magdraft gets the nod for me, like a lot, probably 75% of the time. So I'm not trying to expand my arsenal of 6-inch soft plastic baits at this time. So to get an 8-inch HUD, definitely appealed to me more now. But I did have that 68 special on my list for a year or two, and for whatever reason, never pulled the trigger. There's a bunch of baits like that I mentioned earlier that yeah, that's kind of always the case. There are always going to be baits that I've got my eye on, and for whatever reason, am just not adding to the arsenal. The OSP Blitz crankbait is definitely on that list. There are a bunch that that I know are really good and I want to get, but am just not quite pulling the trigger at this point in time, either because of cost or because I I think they're a little bit too nichey for what they are, or I don't have the right gear to throw them on, or whatever it is. There's different reasons for every one of these baits. So, yeah, Adam Odin, super late to the stream. No problem, man. Good to see you in here. How are you doing tonight? Oh, Daniel already removing a comment, my man. Beautiful moderating job. I appreciate that. Get out of here, spammer. Wow, what timing that was, huh? Bruce Nichols says, talking about spiders, I have a lunker hunt to do. Oh, that's hilarious. Nice little play on words there, Bruce. Brian says, do you have any of Ott's tiny crankbait? Looks good. Um, no, we were talking about that earlier. I do not yet. Someone said they did just get their hands on them. I think Daniel said, and no, I'm not sure it was Daniel, but oh, let's get Cara Hernandez out of here. Come on, moderators, do your job. Um, So no, Brian, I don't have those yet, but am going to get them before next year's season, for sure. I think they also look great. I think it will kind of go hand in hand with, say, the Evergreen Flat Force, which is a shallow diving flat sided crankbait. Most flat side crankbaits are kind of in that uh, shallow to mid depth range, anywhere from 5 to 8 feet of water. So I like the idea of a shallow diving flat side crankbait. And, the Evergreen Flat Force is one of my favorites, runs approximately 4 feet. So it is a plastic injected bait, whereas the Tiny OG is balsa. So I look forward to getting it, trying it, having it, etc. And it's on the list for sure. Matt says real prey are really good. Good quality, always in stock, good prices, have some really nice looking profiles from carp to alewife and a couple others. Interesting. Real prey. Okay, I'll have to give those a look later. Beef Felt Fishing says good tip on the 6 versus 8 inch. Also, you don't feel like the 8 inch is too much for a 4 and 5 pounder? No, I don't actually. Um, nope. I think a 4 pounder could eat an 8 inch bait, no problem. Usually, 4 and 5 pounders are going to have very large mouths and are totally capable of eating a bait that is this size, especially when you consider how they eat a bait. Um, I think too many people are looking at the length of the bait instead of the profile of the bait, as well as the material of it. So if it's a really tall profile, um, that might be a different thing. If it's a gizzard shad or a bluegill bait and it's big, then probably not as much. You're going to get them T-boning those baits a lot more. But if, for the most part, the bass in general, not just big bass, are going to eat bait head first. So an 8 inch HUD is not gigantic. You know, it is a pretty reasonable profile, and I don't think the hookup ratio is going to be any different. Um, it's just that the bait weighs almost twice as much on an 8 inch HUD. So uh, there is a reason that guys were originally taking the tails off of 8 inch HUDs and putting them on 6 inch baits, and that is to have that tail kick a little bit more thump that you get out of the 8 inch, but in a smaller profile, to imitate smaller forage. And so it's more a matter of what you're imitating. That 8 inch perch is a better size for me to imitate the perch that are in my waters, that are anywhere from 6 would be really small, but it would be skinny. 8 inch all the way up to, say, 10 or 12 inch is about a standard size perch where I am. So I think the 8 inch is probably the most appropriate size for actually imitating what is there. And with how soft and tasty perch are and how plentiful they are in the bodies of water that I'm fishing, I really do think that that's going to be proper. So sorry, I just got caught in these comments. Carl Ferg, oh, fun guys. Not bot. Good evening, y'all. Yeah, we know you're not a bot, Carl Ferg. How you doing tonight? Adam says, not super great. Just got hospitalized with the vid. Oh no, Adam. Dude, I am so sorry to hear that. That is brutal. Um, so sorry, man. I hope everything's going a little bit better for you, that you're on the mend. And if you're not yet, either way, just know that we are all sending positive thoughts and prayers your way. I hope everything goes well in terms of your recovery and getting back to living a normal and healthy life. I'm really saddened to hear that, Adam. Bruce, no worries. You can send an email whenever you want. I will probably not respond to you tonight, so there's no rush with it. Okay. Man, you guys are having to do work as the moderators. Who would have known that after making you guys moderators, all of a sudden we're getting spammed? What in the world? Brian says, what hook do you use for a 5-inch spark shad and a 6-inch Magdraft freestyle megabass? That's a good question. I use pretty much the same hook. I like the Owner Beast 6-aught. Mm, which of course neither one of these are rigged on. So yeah, the Owner Beast in the 6-aught size is my favorite by a long shot for the 6-inch Magdraft freestyle. But as a secondary, if I'm using a underspin style head, I do like the Trocar Swim Blade. Okay, and I prefer this over the Owner Flashy Swimmer for two reasons. One, I like that the weight is placed a little bit further down on the hook. The Flashy Swimmer has it all the way up here close to the nose. So when you set the hook, you're making contact with the weight quite a bit earlier. Whereas with this Trocar, if you notice where the belly opens up on the bottom, when you set the hook, the weight of this Trocar can actually fit under here. Okay. It will go into that belly slot and you get a lot more clearance that you would not get out of the Flashy Swimmer. The other thing that I like is just how wide of a gap this hook is. And the Flashy Swimmer, I think, comes in two different versions, and you have to make a point to get the deeper one. I don't know if it's called the Beast Flashy Swimmer or what, but in general, the gap on the Flashy Swimmer is not as much as on the Trocar. So for a weedless underspin, I like the Trocar Swim Blade. For a standard weedless belly weighted swim bait, I like the Owner Beast. 6-aught. As for the Spark Shad, I think that 6-aught works just fine. You can also get away with the 4-aught, though you're just a little bit more prone to short strikes on that one. Now, you can also use slightly different hooks on that one because it's not as deep of a belly. I don't want to pull all these off, but I have one of them rigged over here on a, gosh, that's on a 7-aught. And I want to say this is a Berkeley Fusion belly weighted hook. So looking at that, I think a 6-aught is actually better quite a bit than the 4-aught. So just go with a 6-aught Owner Beast hook and you're good to go on that, Brian. Matt says 6 to 8 inch baits are perfect for 4 and 5 pounders. Yeah, totally agree with that. Michael Romero, have you used the 13 Fishing Flatty Daddy? I have. I've got a couple of them, and I just picked up another one recently, and it's sitting right here actually. Coincidentally, this is one of my favorite colors that 13 makes. It's always hard for me to get this camera to focus on this color because of the colors in it. As you can see, it's got that frosted bill that has the diving depth labeled on it, 3 to 5 feet. It is a relatively flat-sided crankbait. It is not super flat, so it's kind of a hybrid style bait. It's not really wide, but it's also not super flat. Uh, Comes with decent hardware on it. You might want to change those hooks out, but for a $6 crankbait, it's got a relatively loud rattle in it, but it's got a good action. I like it, quite frankly. It's got a traditional square bill on it, and for being a 3 to 5 foot diver, I like that. So solid value bait, and it comes in some really cool color patterns. So yes, I have it. I use it. I like it. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a go-to or a top of the list for me when it comes to flat sides just yet, but I like it. I think it's worth giving a try. Daniel says this was insane. We've never had to do this many bots in one. We've never had this many bots in one night on this stream. Yeah, no, definitely not. In fact, if it keeps happening, um, I might just put those people in timeout as opposed to you guys just hiding their comments because it is kind of ridiculous what's happening. Adam says he has a heart problem, so it's more precautions and getting the antibodies. Just glad that I'm streaming. It's so boring there. Oh, you're at the hospital, dude? Wow. On a positive note, my Do It molds arrived today. Can't wait to start making some jigs and EWG net hooks. That sounds awesome, Adam. That is a positive note, and I hope that you enjoy that journey once you can actually get into it. Sounds sweet. Oh, Daniel, doing the timeout. Sweet. Good work there. You guys can do the timeout. Wow. So I can actually just like spend time looking at the comments and be a little bit behind. I don't have to keep scrolling down to see if these ding dongs are commenting to put them in timeout. You guys can just do that for me. That's awesome. Daniel says I need to get a swim bait rod and reel setup. Um, yeah, that's the way I felt 2 years ago, and for a while. And to be honest, my setup has worked pretty well for me. I'm just a rod away from really having two swim bait setups that will cover all of my needs. I've really got an extra reel at the moment, and I switch between the Daiwa Tatula 200 and the Shimano Trinx 300. The Trinx 300 I really, really like, but I find that it's kind of overkill in size and capacity for a lot of the situations that I've been fishing. So it will perform perfectly for what I need it to when I get a larger swim bait rod. Um, but I've still been using it as kind of my primary reel on my Dobbins Fury 795 swim bait rod just because I have it spooled with straight 20-pound fluorocarbon, and I've found that I much prefer that than I think this past year I had my Tatula 200 spooled with 65-pound braid, and then I was switching out the leader depending on the swim bait that I was using. So sometimes I would use like a 20-pound mono leader. Sometimes I would use a 17 or 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. And yeah, Do I think that Hank Cherry can win another classic? That would be absolutely nuts. Um, and I'll be rooting for it, right? But do I think he can? Sure. Do I think he will? No. Um, but I think people would have said the same thing last year, right? So it's definitely crazy to think about and would be cool because I don't think it's ever happened, right? There's been back to back champs um, like 3 times, maybe 4 times, something like that. Um, so yeah, what KVD did it. Um, Back in the 80s, Rick Klon did it, right? Uh, so it would be absolutely crazy to think if Hank Cherry did a three-peat. That would be so cool. Beef Felt Fishing. You sold on the Megabass Vision 110 being king of jerkbaits. Yeah, I am. I am. I know that it's a kind of a hyped opinion, and uh, and I'm always trying to keep an open mind to other jerkbaits out there. And don't get me wrong, I don't throw the Vision 110 uh, year round. In fact, I find that I like it best as a cold water jerkbait when you really need that refined action, something that is more crisp, perfect suspending, and less aggressive action. Um, I do think that it's king, and in fact, I have it in the silent version as well, and I've got it in the regular, I've got it in the plus one, and I've got it in the junior and the junior plus one. I don't throw it in. I don't have the LBO and I don't have the plus twos, but I do probably have 20 or so of the Vision 110s, and I do think that they're king of jerk baits. So that said, I've got 2 going on 3 boxes of jerk baits, um, of full size jerk baits. You know, just like that 110 to 130 size jerk bait, um, and a whole bunch more that are smaller size as well. So I have a lot of jerk baits and try to use as many of them as I can, and I'm trying to see kind of what holds up to it. You know, I did just recently pick up the 13 Fishing Loco Special. Is that upside down for you guys? Yeah, Loco Special, which is kind of their attempt to compete with it. You know, I've got the Jackal re-range and a whole bunch of other high-end jerk baits that are not quite as expensive as the Vision 110. I don't go all the way down the JDM rabbit hole per se. So it is the most expensive jerk bait that I own. Um, but I like it quite a lot. Mm, yeah, Matt says get a Daiwa DX swim bait. Yeah, that's what I was. Oh, you're not talking to me. Okay, yeah, you're talking to Daniel. Yep, that's the one that I'm looking at getting the extra heavy, as I mentioned earlier. Lose Super Duty 300. You'll be set, Daniel. Those are my swim bait setups and have worked charms for me. Yeah, and honestly, I recommend what I have too. So, yeah, lose Super Duty, Daiwa Tatula 200 or 300. The Tranks 300, all workhorse reels. The Tranks is a little bit expensive, so Daniel says if it wasn't so heavy, I could throw one on my catfish setup. Sheesh. Yeah, the rod and reel weight of that setup probably is obnoxiously heavy. I probably wouldn't do that. Adam also got stuff to tie his own skirts on his jigs. That's awesome, man. Yeah, it sounds like you are totally set up. Um, yeah, tying custom skirts is a super fun thing to do. You know, I tie, flat rubber. I tie round rubber. I'd tie silicone. The way that you can really get custom with your stuff just by buying uh, skirts in tabs is really cool. And so long as you have a vice, uh, the possibilities are endless. So yeah, man. Bruce's dog took forever to drop a deuce or whatever he had to do. He says the only JDM he's into is Honda Civics. Um, Matt says he likes to do his own feather dress trebles. Yep. Yeah, I do both. And it's definitely fun. I got into tying flies originally because my grandpa who passed away last year gave me a bunch of his fly tying stuff, and last year in the off season I finally got around to tying some flies. Started with just like some woolly buggers and um, some San Juan worms and some zebra midges because those are three flies that I use a lot when fishing for trout. Um, and kind of went down that rabbit hole for a while. Upgraded my vise and a lot of my materials, and was doing that for a while. So then I started tying my own skirts on jigs, tying my own feather dress trebles, and yeah, now it's getting all the way down to the point of whittling down soon to be crankbaits, and fiddling around with how I'm going to make them, um, whether to have the wire through or to screw in. And we will see how these turn out here in the next few weeks to a few months, as I continue to amass the materials needed for that. So I am going to need to get some better quality stuff. I think a belt sander would be crucial. Um, I don't really have much of an issue carving by hand, but I do think that a proper saw um, could work wonders potentially. And then I also need some specialty carving materials and drill bits, and then also just the material for um, circuit board lips. And yeah, I'm not that far off of being able to get around to it. I also need some, you know, polyurethane and coating to be able to properly seal the baits. But it's exciting to kind of to play around and do things on your own. Daniel says, "Was it you, Tyler, that talked to us about the 13 fishing 110 size jerk? If you did you ever try it out?" I did tell you about it, and I just showed it to you a minute ago. I only picked it up like last month, maybe from Discount Tackle. It's called the Loco Special. So they make a cheap jerk bait that's like $7 called the Whippersnapper, and then they make this one, the Loco Special, that is like $16 or so. So this is an expensive jerk bait, but is supposed to be a really, really good jerk bait. And I've read and heard some really good things about it. Check out this color pattern, by the way. Woo! Look at that color change. Pretty wicked. So real transparent, a little bit of orange in there. You can see that weight transfer, 2 balls in there. Um, Beautiful looking bait. So yeah, I have not tried it yet. Uh, Simply because I only got it last month and fishing has died around here. So I can't speak to it just yet. But that is definitely one on my list of baits that like is going to get prioritized come April. when I'm out on the water and throwing a jerk bait on a frequent basis. This is going to be one where I want to get to know how this fits into my arsenal. Um, you know, it says it dives 3 to 5 feet deep, so it's going to be somewhere right in between, say, the Jackal Re-Range and the Megabass Vision 110, but that's just diving depth. Like for me, the Vision 110 is a cold water jerk bait, and the Re-Range is not just shallow, but a little bit more of a warm water jerk bait. So um, I will keep you posted on the Loco Special once I have a chance to try it out. So sorry, Daniel. No. Adam says definitely going to try some hair jigs. Think they could be a sleeper type of bait. Yeah, no doubt about it. That is one thing that I have not tied yet, simply because I don't have the right heads for them. Uh, but I will probably go with something a little bit closer to, you know, something along the lines of this Spro Fat Fly. This is a 1/16 ounce, something that can really be thrown under a float. And yeah, these were just such a good deal that it didn't make sense for me to buy all of the materials to make these on my own. These guys were like three, not even $4 for a 2 pack, and they come with Gamakatsu hooks and are already hand tied and everything. So yeah, so you just have to make things in bulk in order for it to really be justifiable. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit behind on the comments. Brian says, "Did you see Jig Squad channel? It's a couple of dudes on YouTube, Epic Eric being one of them." Jig Squad. No, I did not. Maybe I need to check that out. Thanks for the heads up, Brian. I'll look into that later, man. Bruce says, late 80s, early 90s, my brother's godfather owned a small tackle shop in town. He used to tie flies. That's pretty cool. I could see myself doing that, although I'd rather spend my time doing more fishing than selling fishing tackle and tying flies, and I'd rather make more money than probably what you'd do in a small tackle shop. So nothing wrong with that, though. Michael says I have a Tatula 200 and 300. I think the 300 is a little big for my rod now. Daiwa Rebellion swimbait rod up to 4 ounces. Yeah, that's the thing, is a lot of 300 size reels are big, and in this day and age, most 200 size reels can do the job, even some 150s. So I think a lot of people just used to use gear that was overkill, too big. Um, and I think people are realizing now that with the way that technology has gone, spool size, and and just practicality, that you really don't need something that's that big. Yeah, B felt Berkeley Stunna is definitely one that is on that same list for me with the 13 Fishing Loco Special. Um, I don't know why it was evading my brain a couple of minutes ago when I was talking about jerk baits, but the Stunna and the Loco Special are baits that are their company's attempt to compete with a little bit of the market that is the Vision 110. So very refined baits that are well made, um, tuned properly, suspend really well, great action, are expensive, but not to the extent that a Vision 110 is. So definitely makes you curious, right? I've got a couple as well. Adam's going to build his own fluid bed for powder coating as well. Nice. Bruce has a few small Yozuri jerk baits. Probably like this one right here. This is the Yozuri 3DB jerk bait. This is the 2 hook version, so uh, not one that gets a lot of use from me, but somehow still sitting here on the counter in front of me. Sorry for that focus. Um, Adam says, I'm doing more of the hobby aspect versus saving money. I totally hear you there. That's what happened to me with fly tying. I just amassed so much of a collection so quickly that it wasn't about saving money at that point. Um, it was just about, tying enough that I wouldn't need to buy those flies for at least a couple years, and then also make enough to be able to give as gifts to my brother and my dad and a few other guys that I know are into fly fishing, and then also just kind of start experimenting with slightly more complicated patterns and also common flies that I like to use. And then, like I said, it kind of snowballed into uh, feather tying, treble hooks, and then tying skirts onto jigs and adding marabou into those jigs and kind of fooling around, learning to get a little bit more creative. So yeah, it's absolutely a hobby. I agree with you on that, man. Okay, Jig Squad is great. It's Cuda from Smallmouth Crush. Interesting. I will check it out. Jig Squad. And Matt likes the loose Super Duty 300 because it's not as bulky as a traditional 300 like the Tranks. Yep, that's an interesting point. Do I grease my reels through the grease port on the back uh, near the reel handle, or do I send them in to get them greased up? I will grease them up through the port, but I've learned that a little bit of oil goes a long way. Um, Couple years back, I had a reel that was very dry and definitely needed some cleaning and or greasing. And I put some oil in the back of that thing, and I didn't know how much to put in. I probably put the equivalent of, I don't know, 8 or 10 drops. And yeah, I like flooded the thing. It was like leaking grease for a while. So learned my lesson on that one. I will occasionally grease my rails, but I that's not a routine procedure for me. It's only if they're really starting to act up and I can tell that they're grinding a bit. So no, yes and no, right? I don't send my reels in for maintenance. I do it myself, but I'm not the type of guy. I am no, uh, the real test tackle advisors, these guys that are literally like breaking down, taking apart reels and rebuilding them just to see what's inside and to do maintenance work, and they do that as a job on the side. Like no, I don't know anything like that. I'm sorry, I said oil instead of grease, Matt. Yes, I do know. Brian says, "Did you watch your Broncos tonight? Not good. Fire coach or keep him." I did watch the Broncos, and yeah, it wasn't good. Uh, I've been on the side of firing Vic Fangio as well as Pat Shermer for most of this season. Honestly, I'm the type of diehard Broncos fan to be overly optimistic each and every year. Um, that said, my predictions going into this year were still that we would be somewhere between 9-8 or 8-9 for this season. I thought we'd be right around 500. I did not think we would be 5-12. Uh, I mean, it was a bad year for us. We did have a number of issues go on. Um, it some injuries early on in the season. Uh, and then we got rid of Von Miller. Um, Kind of messes with the overall energy on the team. And yeah, I mean, our wide receivers should be stacked, but they're not. Cortland Sutton was hurt for a long time earlier this season, and Jerry Judy's a rookie. And to be honest, Tim Patrick didn't come into his own until halfway through the season when we really needed him to show what he's capable of doing. So yeah, I feel good about our wide receiver core as well as our running backs. I think Javonte Williams really showed what he's capable of this year, but I thought it was a good idea to have the tandem situation with Melvin Gordon, who is a veteran and is still good at what he does, has a lot of juice in the tank. And we're not paying him an arm and a leg, but I have a very strong hunch that we're not going to re-sign him next year. And part of that is because he had some off the field issues, got a DUI this past year. But the other thing is just that, yeah, I think our we might be looking to save a little bit of money. He might prefer to go somewhere where he can be kind of a bell cow type of back. But we'll have to see how that plays out. But the way that our offense was playing calls all season long was just not great. And so yeah, Teddy Bridgewater, solid quarterback, but he has durability issues, as we really found at the end of the season. He got hurt, and all of a sudden, when we have to be playing with Drew Lock as our starting quarterback, our odds go way down. We've all learned and decided that Drew Lock, while he's fun to watch and can be entertaining and electric when he's playing well, he is not a good quarterback. He's not consistent at all. So, um, yeah, dude, Champ Bailey was an absolute beast. Um, I still have one of his jerseys. That was super fun to have him. Um, that said, our DBs aren't bad, and Justin Simmons, cleaning up in the back is nice to have. I think we've got a good squad. It's just bad play calling and not the right quarterback. If we could land Aaron Rodgers, I think all of a sudden we go from a 5-12 team to 10-7, 11-6, and probably sneaking into the playoffs. Uh, as a wild card spot. The unfortunate thing is we're playing in the AFC West where the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes for the next 8 years, and we're screwed, man. So the Raiders and the Chargers are okay, but I do think legitimately any year we can compete for a wild card spot. It's just annoying and difficult when you've got the Chiefs that are so dominant and such a better team. Their offense is just so dominant. Mahomes is unreal. Just kind of a once in a generation type of player, and when he's got the weapons that he has, even just between Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, uh, I don't know what to say. We can't cover them. Nobody can, really. We almost stuck it to them tonight uh, by playing clever defense, but we didn't make the right calls on offense. We made a couple mistakes, turnovers. One thing leads to another, and the momentum shifts. So it is what it is. I think the coaching staff needs to go. A lot of people say that John Elway needs to go, and that executive management needs to change hands, but I don't know about all that. Dude is a legend in our town. So, um, B felt fishing. Born and raised in Indiana, so I was a Broncos fan when Peyton came over. Glad he got another Super Bowl there. Yeah, me too, for sure. we after John Elway left in what was it, 2000, if you look at the stats, it is insane how many quarterbacks we have run through since then. Uh, Peyton is the only guy that we've had be a starter for like more than 2 seasons. Um, and it's arguable that Tim Tebow was the best quarterback that we had aside from Peyton Manning. Um, but that has been the absolute worst thing about the Broncos in the last 20 years has just been drafting and acquiring the right quarterbacks. But when John Elway was able to bring Peyton Manning in town, uh, it was a beautiful thing. We were a great team for a few years there, and it was super fun. Unfortunately, I went to the wrong Super Bowl that we went to, Super Bowl 48 instead of 50. And that was just because we were able to. It was in New York, and it was a relatively easy trip for most of my family to go to. But the Seahawks laid a whooping on us, and that was one of the most depressing Broncos games that I've ever gone to, and I've probably been to well over 100 Broncos games, including some playoffs games at home. Just never gone to a Super Bowl, and that one we didn't even compete for a minute of the game. So, unfortunately, 2 years later, when we were back in the Super Bowl against Carolina, I had a newborn who's now my 6-year-old daughter, and it didn't make sense. We couldn't go. So, um, yeah. Either way, I like to say that she was the Broncos' lucky charm that year. And it was super fun that we finally got another championship here in Denver. So, yeah, I'm with you, man. Guys, I've been on for 2 hours and 16 minutes. It is coming up on midnight here, and there's 10 people in here. That's insane. I don't know why you guys have hung out with me as we're talking about football and just dilly dallying right now. Uh, Brian Waterman, are you saying favorite football player of all time or favorite Bronco of all time? Because that's a relatively tough question, regardless of what you're asking. Um, and yeah, Michael, that fumble in the fourth quarter where we're in the red zone uh, was brutal. I don't think it was Melvin Gordon's fault. Melvin Ingram with that hit was insane. I don't know how he got around the edge. Um, and was able to just freaking smash Melvin Gordon the second he got the ball. It was timed perfectly. Thank you for that, Matt. I was just about to deal with Apar or whatever that dude's name is, Apatat, Ap- Apapat, more Russian dill holes. Um, so yeah, Michael, that was absolutely killer. Uh, so Brian wants to know favorite Bronco of all time. Um, Dude, uh, gosh. So it was really hard not to be a huge Terrell Davis fan when I was growing up. And most of my favorites are going to come from that era that is the late 90s. Um, so yeah, I Terrell Davis was so fun to watch. He was setting records, running for over 2,000 yards, 2 seasons in a row, I believe. And it was just sad that he didn't stay in the league for more than 6 years as an elite running back. And yeah, I would say John Elway, Rod Smith, Terrell Davis, Shannon Sharp was such a monster of a tight end. And then on the defensive side, Steve Atwater was one of the most electric safeties of all time. Um, One guy that I did not like, but probably would in this day and age, was Bill Romanowski. Um, Guy was a dirty player, really hard hitting linebacker. Um, I did not like Romo, but Steve Atwater at safety, Shannon Sharp at tight end, Rod Smith as a wide receiver, Terrell Davis at running back, John Elway at quarterback. I mean, it was just so fun to watch them at that point. So, guys, I see that you guys are dipping out. I'm gonna dip out as well. Romo, yes, no. I did not like him at the time, and in retrospect, I don't know. A little bit controversial because maybe I would like him these days. But guys, I'm out of here. Super fun hanging out with you guys tonight. Thank you so much for joining. If you haven't already, hit the thumbs up button. Do me that quick solid, and I will see you guys again real soon. Um, Hopefully next week with a little tackle warehouse unboxing to do. But if not, hopefully what I'll do instead is gather maybe 10 or 15 baits that I fully intend to put some serious time into in 2022. Baits that more or less I'm most excited about, and that'll be the topic of one of these next streams. Okay, so Bruce sent an email. Cool, man. I will check it most likely sometime tomorrow, even though I'm with the kids tomorrow. So it's possible that you might not hear from me until say or early this upcoming week. And Ron Holly, you were not in here tonight, but if somehow you're watching this on the replay and you're watching to the very last second, I do have all of your stuff that I'm going to send you in a package this week. I know that you really only asked for the wake bait, but I've got some soft plastics that I know that you're interested in that match up with those jigs that we talked about, and soft plastics that you were asking about where to find them. So, guys, have a great rest of your night. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.